think we'll go ahead and get started.
Good.
Let's begin with the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we'll follow with prayer. Heavenly Father, we come to you today asking for your guidance, wisdom, and support as we begin this meeting. Help us to engage in meaningful discussion, allow us to grow closer as a group, and nurture the bonds that bring us together. Fill us with your grace, Lord God, as we discuss issues that affect us, our community, and our country. Continue to remind us that all we do here today, all that we accomplish, is for your greater glory. We ask these things in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, we'll get started. I just have a couple of brief announcements. Kathy Starlotta, Republican Party, we've been working with this week, and she's tentatively put together a meeting on October 9th. It's not finalized yet, but it's close. It's going to be at the Baptist Church in Bear Lake, and it's going to be on the ballot issue on the marijuana. So we'll have something out very soon on that. A lot of important ballot issues, and that's certainly one of the most important. The other thing is our meeting next month, which is Thursday, October 18th. Our speaker next month will be Jack O'Malley, who's running for the Republican candidate for the 101st District seat. He was here in June when he started his campaign, so he's going to come back and talk to us the end of next month. Okay, with that, we will go ahead and begin our program. Steve is here. If you have any questions, please wait for Steve to bring in the microphone so all of us can hear the discussion. Our guest tonight is our Congressman Bergman. He last spoke to us in July 2 years ago, right before the primary election. I would believe that that was that long ago. But we're certainly glad that instead of candidate, we now have Congressman. Congressman Bergman. I think you're all well aware of his background, so with that, we'll just go ahead and introduce our speaker.
Right. Thanks, Mark. You know the difference between a good introduction and a great introduction? That was a great introduction because it was really short. And that's the same thing with speeches or sermons. You know, the old joke was, I grew up Lutheran, so we had never found anything that we couldn't argue about. Okay? But we argued about it in a respectful way because it was based on the theology of the religion. But the difference between a good sermon and a great sermon was one was about 8 minutes and one was about 12 minutes. And I'll leave it to you to figure out which one was which. You know, I guess that is, it's been a long time since I've spoken to you as a group. I don't think it's been that long since I've been back here to the bungalow to meet with you either in smaller groups or different groups. But when I spoke to you 2 years ago as a candidate, I can only tell you what, if elected, what I was going to try to do in Washington, D.C. as a representative. I had no voting record because I wasn't there. And now, 2 years later, I can tell you what we've accomplished. I can tell you what we have yet to accomplish, where we're going in some areas, but I'll stand on my voting record. And about the only thing I can tell you as far as the voting record is that whenever I'm asked to take a vote, I ask one thing first. How does this vote I'm about to take affect the 1st District of Michigan. That's the reason I don't vote for me. You know, I vote for the 1st District of Michigan. Do I expect, and I hope you didn't expect 100% agreement on all our votes. But if we get honest data, any statisticians in the crowd here, okay, well, bell curve, 80%. If you're getting an 80+% effectiveness success rate, you're doing pretty well. Okay, because that's kind of how life works. You know, the old saying is if you like today, enjoy it, because tomorrow could be a bear. If you don't like today, hang in there, because tomorrow could be a really good one. So the point is, you know, a lot of life is just showing up, hanging in there, doing the right thing for the right reason. And I'm going to kind of, the young lady here is doing such a fantastic job of serving your food, I'm going to kind of just talk a little bit as you eat. Do not let your food get cold once it arrives. That's the first rule we have in our house, so say it to my wife. If it comes hot, eat it hot. You know, in her case, she doesn't like melted ice cream. So, boy, I'll tell you what, if you get ice cream anywhere near her, it's gone before you turn it around. She likes ice cream cold. Let me begin. Stephen Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. One of those habits is begin with the end in mind. I'd like to tell you what my end game is here today. The end game is to make sure that each one of you leave here knowing how extremely important it is on November the 6th for all of us and like-minded friends to vote. It's a big year and potentially dangerous year for the state of Michigan. From the Senate side, as a U.S. Senator, we've got a great candidate in John James. Does he have a tough road to hoe? Absolutely. But you know what? He's one tough dude. You know, he came with a plan. We know where we are with the governor. That door's going to keep opening and closing, Steve, so I don't want you to keep getting up and down, but we'll have other people closer to the door shutting as she goes in and out. But this is an extremely important year for the state of Michigan. Again, the end in mind, do not let any of our like-minded voters stay home. Whatever we can do from our campaign, from our office to support you, if you've got people who aren't sure, reach out to us. I'll give them a call. Okay? We're knocking doors all over the district, but that is, we're 48 days out, and the blink of an eye, we will be at November the 6th. How many of you are going to vote absentee? Okay. Absentee ballots are up this year. So again, check with your friends to make sure what they're up to. Now, anybody would like to, any of you like to know what it's like to be in Washington, D.C.? Well, there's a couple of things. It's like living in the middle of a soap opera. Okay, because when you think a soap opera is a fantasy, not reality, created because people, all of us as human beings, for some reason, all of us are interested in the lives of others and the dynamics. That's what keeps soap operas going. So those of you who watch Days of Our Lives or As the World Turns for decades, that interest in human beings and how their daily life goes just somehow fascinates us. So take that into Washington, D.C. Now with the way of the news cycle, the media, all that, it's, my wife and I get up, the typical day for me when I'm in Washington, D.C. starts about 7 a.m. and I'm out the door or at my computer or on the phone by 7. I have a 4-minute walk to work in D.C. My wife and I had lived there before when I was still in the Marine Corps, and we said the single biggest distraction in Washington, D.C. is traffic. So we took that out of the equation because I didn't want to have to be dealing with traffic on a daily basis up there. So we rented an apartment literally 2 blocks from the Canon office building where my office is. We have been so much more productive when we're there because, again, no stress of having to deal with the DC traffic. But I'll be usually watching the news by 6 a.m. and that's really the only time I turn on the TV. And it's kind of like watching the game films from the day before, because all the talking heads now are assessing what you did. So it's the Monday morning quarterbacks are out there, and I can usually tell how well we've done if I've got the people who are on CBS Good Morning, who, if they're frowning, I'm happy. I'll just leave it at that. So, you know, you get the day started, I walk out the door, and then it's meetings, it's votes, it's more meetings, and usually the day ends about 9 o'clock at night when I roll back into the house, and I don't really bother to turn on the TV at that point, because I'm pretty well fried, and my wife, Cindy, and I will have a glass of wine and go to bed, and get up the next morning and do it again. But that's the daily routine. My office staff in DC, as well as the office staff here in the district, which of course locally for you all is Traverse City, and in UP it's in Marquette. We're only as good as our staff, and our staff is spectacular. In fact, I've got Melanie here with me tonight, Melanie Collinsworth, who runs the office. She deserves to hang. But it's because of their proactive approach to constituent service that really gives me a sense of pride in what we're accomplishing for all of our constituents. One data point, at the end of our first year in office, I asked for, okay, what percentage of the constituent cases that we have been given have started for individuals, what have we closed? And we were right at between 75 and 80% closure on the cases. That doesn't necessarily always mean a yes answer, because as you know, sometimes you have something that at the end up, the answer is, no matter how much we'd like to get the yes, the answer is no. But we're getting answers. And the dogged nature of the staff and how they, combine whether it be phone calls, emails, snail mail, they really do a spectacular job. I will tell you, and Steve, maybe you can help me with this next. Of course, you're not up in Iron River in the winter. The only request I've had to turn down from a constituent was about 3 months after getting into office, so it was March. And a lady called the DC office and wanted to talk to the congressman because there was some guy who kept, in Iron River, who kept hitting her mailbox with a snowplow, and she wanted the congressman to move her mailbox. So I just happened to walk, you can't make this stuff up. So I go walking into the office about the time this conversation is going on. I said, well, let me take the call. So I talked to this lady for probably, well, I don't know, 5-10 minutes. And I said, ma'am, I can't do it in my official duties as your congressman, but the next time I'm through Iron River, I will stop by, and if the ground is not frozen at that point, I will do everything I can to move your mailbox. So I will admit, I did not, there was one mission I did not accomplish, but I can tell you those kinds of stories. But one other unique thing that's important, because you've seen this when it comes to communications, civil communications. We get a lot of interns, the young, I'll say boys and girls, because some cases they are boys and girls, they're really not even young men and women yet, they're still, maybe senior in high school. They'll come in and they'll spend a week or 2 weeks, or sometimes in the summer we get them for a month. We have one rule in the office. Well, we have a couple of rules when it comes, because they answer the phones, and they're the front line, and they get calls from people who are out of their mind irate. Okay? And these youngsters are getting a real schooling in what good human behavior is or is not. But we have one rule, that if anyone on the other end of the line uses profanity, you're authorized to hang up the phone. Because we do not, you can state your opinion, you can be screaming, you can be yelling, but if you get profane, you know, call's over, that's it. Because we don't operate that way. That is, you know, we just don't. Yeah. So, let me give you a little bit of the landscape. And I said, what's it like to be in DC, living in a soap opera? We've taken the distraction of traffic out. I want there to get things done. We've got a magic number in Washington, D.C., in the House of Representatives. It's 218. What that means is if I've got a good idea, I have to get 217 other people to agree with that idea before it can become law. That's the majority vote, okay? So how do you do that? Well, what you do is you go and you build relationships. Not about me, it's about finding out who you are, whether you be from Tennessee or New Mexico or whatever it is. Build relationships with people, all people, Democrats, Republicans, doesn't make any difference. I want to know because there's going to be a time I could potentially need your vote to support something that we know is the right thing to do, and I have to talk to you in terms that you'll understand. One example, the Sulaks, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later, but I found a representative from the other side of the aisle who had an automotive assembly plant in their district. And I, over the course of a couple of months, explained to them, found out how much they touted this plant is a very important thing. And so we know, of course, if the Sulaks shut down, a few months after that, your plant's going to shut down. Their eyes got about this big. They said, what? I explained to them the importance of the Sulaks and what it meant to all districts, you know, potentially all districts around the country. And they went, I had no clue. So I built an ally. Yeah, that's how I chose to go there and do my business, is to build the relationships first so we can talk and agree to disagree, but then in the end, come to sometimes very difficult decisions. There are very few easy votes in the House. You have to take tough votes at times, and I'm not shy about that. So let me tell you about the energy in Washington, D.C. right now. There's two types. There's the positive excitement energy, and I'm talking now especially within the bureaucracies, the department of this, the department of that. Good, hard-working folks who've been there a long time, who've quite honestly been stifled by leadership in bureaucracies that didn't want to assume any risk, didn't want to take any risks. They were, risk averse. These people who've been toiling for a long time and have good ideas, they're standing up like this. You know, we're getting more flow from the agencies, the departments. When we make an inquiry or people coming to us, there's a lot of information flow now that over time, I believe will make the federal government it'll never be efficient, but it's got to be effective. And as we continue to basically chip away at the inefficiencies or the duplications or whatever it happens to be, is the people inside who are good people who will actually make that change. They feel empowered. And then there's the nervous energy. The folks who may have been the stiflers, they're a little nervous right now because they're being called out in different ways. I've had a chance to be, in several meetings, with the president, and his style is his style. I'm not going to sit here and talk about styles, but it's about results. It's about results. And what you're going to hear more on as we go on the campaign trail here. It's very simple from our side of the aisle. It's about results, not rhetoric. Talk. The other side wants to own the issue, but they don't want to do anything. We can agree there's an issue. Okay, great. We've identified the issue. Now let's move on. Let's figure out a way to get results. The other side doesn't want to do that. And I'll be honest, some on our side don't want to do that. There are, when you first, by the way, I'm going to preface this by saying one of the things I've learned in Washington, D.C., if you're going to attempt humor, I start with, this is an attempt at humor. So everybody can relax a certain muscle in their body that allows them to, you know, sense things. But when you first get on the floor of the House of Representatives, as a new person just getting there. By the way, you know why I'm standing in one place? Because I know you're filming and I don't want to be that moving target. Normally I would move around, but I don't want to be that absent person and all you hear is the voice. So I'll try to stay tethered here.
Thank you.
But when you first get on that House floor, you walk there and you go, holy cow, I'm one of about 12,000 people in the history of our country who's occupied one of these elected offices in the House of Representatives. That's where, I mean, you stand there and you're in awe. And 6 months, you know, you say, how did I get here? How did I get here? Then about 6 months later, you're standing in that same spot and you're looking around and you're seeing everybody in the chamber and you go, how did they get here? That was a joke. But
that was good.
Thank you. 10,000 comedians out of work, right? For that day. But when you think about the 435 people who are there, everybody has a vote, and no matter how long they've been there, whatever their capabilities are, whatever their viewpoints are, I believe it's incumbent upon all of us, going back to the building relationships, bridging whatever that divide is, knowing that you're never going to agree ideologically on some things, but get to the point of making a decision. Don't be afraid. If you worry when you're about to vote, if you're going to get reelected because of that vote, you're the wrong person to be there. You're absolutely the wrong person to be there. I'm more than willing to stand here and you can, you know, we'll talk about whatever votes that I might have taken that you disagree with. I got that. Again, that 80%. You know, I accept that because I'll learn from the dialogues where we disagree. Could I have done better? Okay? That's kind of, so that's just a little bit about daily activity as in the norm of my duties in the House. Walking back and forth from the office, through the tunnel, into the Capitol, voting, going over to other buildings for committee meetings, roundtables, different things. I will tell you that you've all seen, you probably all watched C-SPAN and you've seen a committee or subcommittee hearing on TV. The worst thing, I believe, that is part of the committee hearing process is the camera. Because it becomes theater. Everybody's posturing. And it's on the VA committee under Chairman Rowe, Bill Rowe from Northeast Tennessee, great guy, great chairman, great leader. He said, we're going to go to more, we're still going to have our hearings because the American people have to see what's going on. But he said, we're going to go to more roundtables, issue-specific roundtables. So we're going to invite the stakeholders, whether it's the Veterans Administration, whether it's the VSO, the Veteran Service Organizations, or maybe the providers, the companies that do business. Anybody who has a stakeholder in that particular issue that we're talking about, we're going to invite them into a roundtable. And we do these, it's been very successful because we as the members in the committee hearings usually do most of the talking. Go figure, right? You have a committee hearing and the people asking the questions do the talking. In the roundtable, we do the least talking and let the dialogue go back and forth between the VA, between the VSOs, between the contractors, who's ever there at that particular meeting. And as members, we talk the least. I get the most out of that because I can hear then the relative facts or the perspectives given that particular issue. So I'm here to tell you that, at least in the Veterans Affairs Committee, and we're probably one of the most bipartisan committees that there is. We still have our little aisle-to-aisle tiffs on certain things. But for the most part, we had good folks working there for the betterment of the veterans. I'll just make a couple more comments and I'll throw it open to Q&A. Has everybody, by the way, has everybody who ordered gotten their food? Anybody still waiting? Okay. Sitting on 3 committees, Veterans Affairs, I am a subcommittee chairman, an oversight and investigation. Chairman Rowe's comment was, well, I think we'll give that one to the general, because as a Marine, he's used to poking around in a very direct way and asking people, you know, what's the deal? So I'd probably be a subcommittee chairman there as a freshman. Natural resources. Perfect committee to sit on, given where we live. We've been able to do some, I believe, very good legislation that does 2 things. Number 1, preserve the natural beauty of our resources. Okay? Conserve our resources, move forward to the, if you will, the idea of public lands for public use, and not having, you know, Forest Service cut off trails and do, you know, different things that federal government approach that would just shut it off. That way we don't have to deal with it. Anybody here know what a cormorant is? Okay, I introduced legislation on the Cormorant Control Act. We passed it out of committee. We revised the language just a little bit that basically makes it's easier to begin the depredation of cormorants sooner. So that we're hoping is going to go in a package of bills out of natural resource to the floor here fairly soon. And the last committee, which I believe, if I was making the rules, every congressman and congresswoman would be required to do a tour on the budget committee sometime during their first 2 terms. When we first checked in, they gave all the freshman members a 26-page document called The Evolution of Federal Budgeting. I retitled it When 2 and 2 Cease to Equal 4. And it's a scary, scary document because we don't have a revenue problem in this country. We've got a spending problem. And I'll just end by giving you one example. Each year, the federal government pays out roughly $150 billion, with a B, dollars in what's called improper payments. Somebody getting a Social Security check that maybe passed away 2 years ago. You know, the check still goes out. Somehow somebody's can't do whatever, okay? Maybe a check that was supposed to be for $100, that's $1,000. Just a clerical error. There is no incentive within the federal government bureaucracy to cut that waste. If you think about, if we could cut it by 1/3, you could give all 50 states $1 billion, you know, back. You know, not take it in the first place and say, well, what could Michigan do with $1 billion? I would suggest to you quite a bit. That's where I believe we can make the best strides going forward here for the American people on the wasteful spending side is to energize that bureaucracy. Remember I mentioned earlier about the positive energy, but somehow, and I have to be very careful because I'll say one word, I'll mean it one way, somebody takes it another way, but somehow, how do you incentivize a person, because it starts with individual efforts, how do you incentivize a person to do their job better? How do you do that? There's various ways, but the point is, and you all know the term draining the swamp, right? Yeah. It's okay. There's 2 swamps in Washington, D.C., minimum. The elected swamp, which you drain. You control the vote as whether people get reelected or not. The voters drain the elected swamp. I went there to drain that bureaucratic swamp, that unelected bureaucracy that is really, I believe, really the main challenge that we have as we go forward as a country. Give you 2 examples. Well, first of all, just as a matter of happenstance, 44 years ago, when I was still in the Marine Corps and was going to school at night with a bunch of my buddies. We were flight instructors down in Pensacola, Florida. We'd just gotten back from Vietnam. And we decided, well, whether we stay in the Marine Corps or get out, it'd be a good idea to have a master's degree. So we went to school at night for a year and a half, and we got our MBA. But my chosen subspecialty was organizational development, AKA bureaucracies. So I've been studying bureaucracies since literally 1974. And that's why I'm passionate. I know we can do better, because I've studied whether the public sector, the private sector, because that's where really we can make the greatest advances. Now, when I got recalled to active duty in 2003, checked into the Pentagon. I was a brand new 2-star, and this Department of Defense bureaucrat welcomed me, shook my hand, and said, "Welcome, General. Glad you're here. Just remember one thing. I can outlast you." That was my welcome. Because I was just a reserve, recalled to active duty. But they failed to consider that maybe a year and a half or 2 years later I'd come back wearing a 3rd star, and then maybe the hierarchy was a little different. I'm not sure what that person is doing in retirement, but I know that they went into retirement not that long. But that was the attitude, that whether you're coming in as a general officer, whether you're coming in as an elected official, that's the attitude that I believe is one of the most dangerous to our federal government. So you can take a look at the state of Michigan, you can take a look at your counties, you can take a look what is the bureaucratic attitude in those different layers of government. So having said that, you guys got your food. Anybody else that hasn't gotten served yet? Oh, good. So it must be question and answer time. So why don't we do that? We'll throw it up. I'm going to give you 1 or 2 answers. Here's what I know, or I have no clue, but I'll find out for you, because you could potentially, one of the most interesting things that I've found in my 20 months here is that some people are very well versed in a subject, much deeper into the details than I am at this point. But that's why I enjoy these interactions, so I can take your knowledge, go back, synthesize it, if you will, and then come back and give you, a thoughtful answer. I'm not going to give you a political answer. I'll give you a thoughtful answer. So you want to be first?
Yeah, I have a question.
Okay.
Since most federal employees are civil service employees, how are you going to go about draining the unelected swamp?
I asked a derivative of that question last night at the candidate forum in Escanaba, and the question revolving around the Janus decision on federal worker unions requiring people to pay dues. Now you have to know a little bit of my history. As an airline pilot for over, almost 2.5 decades, I was a dues-paying union member of the Airline Pilots Association, okay? So now having said that, I'm not a fan of the public sector taxpayer money going towards the union activities in the public sector. Private sector, totally different story. That's the difference between the company and the union. I am not anti anything other than anti any relationship that denies cooperation for the success of the entity. I know that sounds like kind of a vague answer. But I think the way we began to drain that bureaucratic swamp is what we have right now with President Trump putting the pressure on from the top level down. And Congress has to begin to assume some of its roles that it's been abdicating for too long. So to take responsibility for what the congressional role, the congressional duties are. And, for example, let's talk about education. I talked about it 2 years ago. If I was able to do it, I would close the Department of Education at the federal level. No question.
You do what?
close the Department of Education at the federal level. Because in most cases, the best decisions on education are made at the state and local levels. Because you understand where you live, your student population, the needs, all the different things, and to allocate your monies wisely. Is it realistic to think about closing the Department of Education? Probably not. Is it realistic to really reduce it and refocus the efforts down? Yes. So, start with the Department of Education in limiting its role, turning that back to the states. Go into, and just one other example, take the Department of Defense and basically make it my words now, a reportable entity in a corporate manner, that there's responsibility for outcomes, and if you're a department manager and you don't achieve your goals, you're gone. General Mattis has that kind of attitude, but the pushback in that building is unbelievable. Well, as I kind of mentioned in my other term, there are people there that believe they can outlast any Secretary of Defense. When you have places like the Department of Labor, it's a bureaucratic tactic when you engage them on a specific issue to say, well, no, that's over there. That's the that's DHS responsibility, or that's energy, or that's... So it's about that holding each and every agency, and then therefore through it, accountable. That's a long process to get that done. But I really believe that in the first 18 to 20 months, we've seen more progress than I thought we would see in that quick a time. And that's because of the energy that President Trump's administration brings to a lethargic, think they have all the answers, Washington, D.C. So we just have to keep the pressure on.
You know, one thing, almost, I'm sorry for my voice, screwed up, but, you know, we get requests from many politicians almost daily to send them donations and funds. Many are Republicans, some are Democrats, but right now, mine and many people that I go to different meetings with have got their checkbooks locked and solid, will not give a penny to a Republican unless it's someone like Jim Jordan and his people, which the rest of the Congress, Republican Congress, seems to be fighting, and all these things that are said to be done, we are not being made aware of out here in the public, except for when we go to a meeting, and you and some others. Well, and you and some others let us know. But right now, many of us, and I don't know about here, but I know in a lot of our parties and in the Drain the Swamp, we think very lowly of many in the Republican Congress. And I'm not talking about you or Jim Jordan, but there are many that, I mean, if we had to, we would not vote for it again, you know? And what we don't understand is why the Republican Congress will not stand nose to nose with people like Maxine Waters, Jeff Flake, Senator Byrd, and a number of others, because all they're doing is fighting and trying to kick Trump out of office, you know? And we just really would like to know why no one would stand up to these people.
Okay. I'm gonna answer your question, and I'm gonna answer it in a slightly different way. I'm using a different, maybe an example. We all like to come to the bungalow here to enjoy a good meal. How many of you want to watch it all being made in the kitchen? Okay, maybe some. what you, as the American public, are seeing is, remember I said it's kind of like living in the middle of a soap opera? This is a media world that is trying to shape opinion. And the media has chosen sides. And believe me, it's not our side. It is not our side. We could have total agreement on our side to move forward with what you just said, and somehow the media would find a way to subvert that and turn it into a negative. I went there to get stuff done and to work with others. I have personal opinions about everybody I've met, but I never form a personal opinion about anybody until I really see them in action. Okay? And I know that there are people I can trust and people I can't trust. This is not about Democrat or Republican. Maxine Waters, she's probably one of the best things that ever happened to us. Okay? If you can't get someone with our viewpoint to say this is an example, if you don't vote Republican and keep a Republican majority, you're going to have Maxine Waters. I don't get into personalities, I get into performance. And I don't buy into a lot of the stuff that unfortunately you only get a chance to see it through the media, what you read, what you see, what you hear. And there's good people there trying to do good things, and I sense your frustration, but I can only guarantee you one thing. If the Democrats win the House, I can guarantee you Nancy Pelosi will be the Speaker. There is no question. Maxine Waters will head up Energy and Commerce, and you can go the other thing. The absolute best thing that can happen to the Democratic Party in our country as it exists today would be to get a shellacking all around the country. It will give them a chance then to figure out what they want to be in the future as it relates to the success of the country. If they win, they're going to think they got it right. Okay? That's, again, I'm probably not going to get into the personality types.
Good evening, and thank you for coming tonight, General.
Oh, good to see you.
Good seeing you too. I commend you for your work over the last 18, 19 months about getting the Sulak expansion moving forward. I'm not sure how long it will take before they actually start breaking ground, but I'm sure that you will make sure that it is on a timely basis. One other thing that brings to mind when you talk about the economics is a thing called the Asian carp. Now, my understanding, that was part of the Great Lakes Initiative, that was supposed to be eliminated, and as such, they're spending like a couple $100,000 a year. I don't see how that's doing anything to prevent the Asian carp from coming here, because it's going to impact 3 of the lakes that you represent, the people on those shores, the industries that live off from that, as well as the economies being destroyed from not only here in Michigan, Wisconsin, a little bit in Indiana, we've got Ohio, as well as Ontario, so as well as the UP, because they could end up into Lake Superior. I don't know that they will, because of the locks, the way they're set up, and the cold temperatures of Lake Superior. So, what's actually being done to being natural resources?
Yep. Well, great question. Everybody aware of the Asian carp wants to come in through the Illinois, Chicago River, you know, and you realize, of course, there was a time in history that the flow, they were worried about the invasive species from Lake Michigan getting into the river and going down to Mississippi. If you look at the history of the project. I was down at Brandon Road, which is just right outside Joliet. Bill Heising and I made a trip over there, it was probably got to be 6 months ago now, and actually got a brief from the Army Corps of Engineers. In fact, they did this map that showed the whole Brandon Road locks, the electric barriers and all the things that are going on. And it's about probably a 15-foot long map that I asked him for a copy of, and I have it in DC so that when I have someone come into the office, I can explain to them in specifics what the Brandon Road Locks project is about. And there's always challenges with everything. The fight there, the adversarial on the other side of that equation, they don't want Asian carp to get into the Great Lakes, but yet the folks who operate their vessels on that waterway don't want to be inconvenienced because it's their business to move their cargo or move their goods up and down through that lock. So they're the opposing force to a large extent right now. As far as the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative, an initial president's budget a year ago, they zeroed out the project, went from 300 million to zero. I spearheaded a group of roughly 22 legislators that had districts that bounded the Great Lakes, and through letters and through basically calls to the White House and OMB, we got the money restored. Okay, so the GLRI, as it's called, is still fully funded. Here's the challenge with that project specifically. In that $300 million, there are 3,500 individual line item expenditures. 3,500 different places that monies are being spent out of that $300 million. So again, going back to the bell curve, the 80%, I would suggest to you that 80% or thereabouts was probably being spent, wisely, appropriately. 10% is probably being spent spectacularly, and 10% shouldn't be funded. That is the nature of things. One of the challenges in the bureaucracy and in moving government forward, as President Reagan said, there's nothing closer to eternal life than a government program. Once you get a funding line for something, you expect that funding line forever. And in historic terms over decades, the way federal budgeting worked, and I can tell you this because I built for my military command for 4 years, I had from 2005 to 2009, our budget, annual budget was about $955 million a year. When I got there, the standard was, well, we'll take last year's budget and add 10%. What business would operate like that? That makes no sense either for the business model or for the fiscal model. So that accountability piece within the bureaucracy that I keep going back to is where we're going to, number one, get the limited dollars spent wisely. And we cannot lose the battle with the Asian carp. That is a battle we cannot lose. So just know that there are folks, both Democrat and Republican. Marcy Kaptur out of Toledo is kind of the co-chair of on the Democratic side. Bill Heising is a co-chair on the Republican side in that specific arena. But we realize the value of getting that right and not, because well, again, once it's done, it's done, once they're in the ring. So all I can tell you is that there's a lot of attention. It may not be headline news, but the moving forward with the expanded Brandon Road project, here's the challenge. So let's say you're with one of the carriers and you're on board one of those vessels and you start through that lock and they hit the electricity. Guess what conducts electricity? Metal. So you have to now put in new safety procedures so that you don't potentially electrocute the crew members that are on that vessel. This is just one of the realities of how do you get things done, how do you get it right. And so that's just maybe more than you wanted to know about the electrical barriers down there, but there's a lot of hard, a lot of people putting in a lot of good, solid due diligence work to make sure we don't lose the battle and also don't hurt anybody in the process.
One more question here.
Okay. You've made many military moves, haven't you?
I have.
Yeah. I have a friend that is moving from Fort Drum to Fort Leonard Wood. And there's a real problem with the movement of household goods in good order, to arrive in good order, to not lose anything, to have things stolen by the people that are moving their goods. I know this doesn't fall in your purview, but how can that ever be addressed and minimized? Is these people that are being moved are not exactly rich people, and they can't afford to keep replacing all that.
You ready for me to answer?
I am.
All right. Well, actually, again, I'll just, the longer you live, the more stories you have to tell. The only thing I've ever gotten stolen in a military move, when I went to Vietnam, packed all my stuff and stored it. My wife and at that point 4-month-old daughter went back to Minnesota to live because that's where my wife was from. So we had all of our stuff in storage for a year. I got back in Vietnam a year later. The mover shows up with the truck, unloads the stuff at the house, and we had been stationed in Pensacola, unloads. There was one thing missing: my Marine Corps sword. They stole my sword. I didn't need it. I didn't need a sword, you know, all the fancy stuff, uniforms when I was deployed. They stole my sword, and it just pissed me off to the point where I refused to buy a new one. And I was standing at an inspection like a year or two later in front of the colonel, and he says, "Captain, your sword is too short because it has to be at a certain height." I said, "Yes, sir." "Why is that?" And I pulled out my letter that said I wanted to be reimbursed for my sword, and they wouldn't reimburse it. He just walked away, and, you know. But I take all that stuff very personally. Now, here's how the process works, because we've had multiple moves. If there is a discrepancy, and this is attention to detail on both ends, that's why, you know, everybody has to pay attention. But there is an orderly process for addressing discrepancies. What happens then, let's say things either get lost, because you never know if it's lost or stolen. Okay, big ways it's not there, and then things get broken or damaged. Those are kind of the two categories. If a carrier has too many discrepancies that happen to fall, too many things lost, then they cease to get contracts. Okay, so it's kind of like you have to perform because the customer, in this case the military family, gets to fill out what happened, and it's all documented. But are you going to eliminate? Those kinds of things? Unfortunately, we got some bad actors. But I can tell you that if this person, you know, timeliness. Now, you learn never to say never. But here's one that the person said, whoever was at the moving office said, "Well, your goods will be there unless the truck burns." Well, guess what? The truck rolled over and burned en route. So don't use a phrase that may come back to bite you. But that literally has happened, you know, and you can't make those things up. But there's a process in place to make sure that you're made whole, and if it's damaged, it's repaired, and it just may take longer than stuff.
Here's another question, John.
Okay.
General, you spoke earlier about the bureaucrats that frivolously waste $1 billion here, $1 billion there, and don't think anything of it because nobody can fire them, and they can keep on going. Have you ever considered, or would Congress consider, making it a little incentive for every $1 billion, $1 million, whatever a bureaucrat finds and saves, he gets a commission, 2% of that money in his pocket. Now, I think that would be a strong incentive for a lot of people to say, "Oh, we're wasting this money over here, and by the way, I get $100,000 in my IRA because I turned it in, and we save $1 billion, and we only spend $100,000.
You know, I'm a businessman, and I would do that in a heartbeat. And I actually brought that up in a kind of a closed-door meeting. I was told, by the way, I'm not ruling it out, but because I would do that. However you incentivize that, you know, and one way to do that potentially is to say, if you save the money, allow them to carry it over, whatever, and to spend to reduce next year's expenditure, don't care, but to incentivize that behavior. The word incentivize is something that scares people who control bureaucracies. They don't want to incentivize anything. Okay, I'm with you. But I have too many of my colleagues who have never been in the private sector and have never had P&L responsibilities for a company, don't understand what it means to it. Because you don't make, if you're a company, you don't make incremental profits on sales. I mean, you might. You're going to make your incremental profits on controlling your internal expenditures. I mean, business 101 doesn't compute with too many people who have been used to just, where do you get more money? Well, I'll just go and ask Congress for it. We're not a piggy bank, we're not an ATM machine. We have been in too many people's minds for too long. One more question here, Jack.
I know you're a busy man. This week, Project Veritas has been releasing undercover videos of the type of the deep state that is going on. Individual employees within various departments are being taped. Project Veritas has put this whole thing together. There are people that, right now, they're focusing on members of the Democratic Socialist Party who are active within the swamp. Are you aware of Project Veritas at all?
I have heard the name, but I could not give you chapter and verse of what they do. So the short answer is no. You could educate me on that.
Okay, my suggestion is you do look them up because they are in this week. It's been one department after another. They did the Department of Justice. They did. What else have they done? Anybody help me? They did the Department of State, and these are people that are on government time. They're government employees. Are doing direct work for the Democratic Socialist Party, and they're being paid, and they openly admit that you can't get fired from the federal government, so I'm going to do this anyway. So I guess I would recommend to you that someone on your staff do some digging into and viewing these Project Veritas exposures that are going on. They're going to continue on into next week. That each day, depending upon the response that they're getting from different departments, whether or not they're going to follow up on them. Again, it's something you need to be very, very aware of as far as part of the draining process. Most of the comments have been that it's middle management that's the fault because they rubber stamp things, they don't look at what they're doing. Again, we get back to that word incentivize. There's no incentive to do a good job, and there's no incentive to flush out people who are blatantly admitting that they are slowing down Trump's agenda.
Thank you. I will look into the question very much. Right here.
I have a question about the ads that are running up here in northern Michigan for you and for your opponent. I guess whoever is in charge of your ads is trying to make you look folksy and like you're one of the...
So you saw the ad where I was washing dishes and cleaning toilets?
Yeah. I think that's really ineffective. I mean, it does not help your cause. It'd be better if you talked about some of the things you passed and worked on and how you want to drain the swamp and all stuff like that. Meanwhile, your opponent is saying, I'm going to work across the aisle and I'm going to do everything for everybody, you know, and it's just, I want you to win, you know. Please stop that.
Would you accept some data that because we told, we don't do anything randomly. We don't just wake up in the morning and decide, oh, let's do an ad on this or let's do an ad on that. Before we did the ads, and these were all filmed back in July, we did everything from polling numbers on issues to what's going on in the first district, to what's going on in the Republican and Democratic parties nationally that might turn on or turn off potential voters. There are people on the right and left who, no matter what the ad is, they're going to vote for their party. Okay? There is a group called the Persuadables. The Persuadables sit somewhere in the middle, and they are persuaded based upon a couple of things. Number one, how you treat other people, even if you disagree with them. You attack them, or you just, are you polite but, you know, respectful and say, no, I don't, you know, whatever it is. I can tell you that the numbers nationwide show that the group of voters who will vote are tending to not like President Trump and anything Republican, are young to middle-aged, college-educated women. Okay? So the point is, I had, right after the ad came out, I had a person email me who I used to fly with at Northwest Airlines. And I run into her every once in a while when I come in and out of Traverse City. And she said this, I don't like your ad. Makes you look weak. And literally, I got this text when just before I took off in Detroit and landed in Traverse City. I get out of the airplane in Traverse City, and I ran into another flight attendant that I used to fly with, who's friends with the one who texted me. And I said, hey, Sherry, I just got this text from Jan, and I want to show you this ad. And I said, what do you think? So I showed her the ad, and I explained to her what we were trying to do, especially with the family leave piece, if you look at the details, because you can't give a whole policy in a 30-second ad. But the point is, that ad is focused on legislation that will be introduced that says, if you need to take an early withdrawal for a couple of months on your Social Security, which is your money, that is your money, all it says is you elected to defer by ever how many months you've taken, you defer your beginning date to take it. That's going to be the crux of that. It's not businesses having to pay for this. It's not another government giveaway. But the point is, by the time I was done with that interaction, and Sherry talked to Jan texted me back, I got it, I understand. I just wanted to but I respect and understand what you're saying as far as we know by and large where the undecided voters are. Okay? And they can go either way. So that's, I mean, that's the rationale for doing what we did. Have you seen the ad on the Sulaks?
Yeah.
Okay. You saw the first ad. Yeah. I'm still that straight talking Marine General, but I don't want young mothers to think I'm going to eat their kids. Okay? I'll discipline them, you know, like any good parent or grandparent would, but it's, you know, and I appreciate that because I'll be very honest with you, if someone gives us a contribution of $1, we're going to get $1.20 or $1.30 out of that dollar. Because I'm a Marine. Some people might say I'm cheap. I'm just saying I'm frugal. But the point is, we target everything we do when it comes to our campaign and don't waste a cent. And we get direct. We have the advantage in that people know I'm going to be direct with them. Okay? But that's just, but thank you. You know, don't let it deter you. All right? Or, and I'll offer this to any of you, if you have anybody in your life who's undecided on whether or not they're going to vote for me, like it's your job to get them to vote. But if they're undecided they're going to vote for me, give me their number, I'll call them. We'll say, I'll have a cup of coffee or whatever. I offer that all the time.
The undecided vote is very, very targeted by both sides.
Sure.
So they know exactly what they're doing. Yeah. Here's one more question, John.
Not actually a question. I just want to say, I don't think you're hearing what she's saying. I am not an undecided voter, but that particular ad makes me think of your opponent, I'll tell you.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what, and again, I got it, and the point is, the beauty of our country is that we get to decide who we vote for. If you vote for him based upon that ad, as opposed to me, I accept it. I know what my intent was. If I missed the mark with you and you want to spend time and talk about it one-on-one and give me a chance to, if you will, win your support back, I'll take that time too. But I didn't come here to do anything other than work for the people, make the toughest, tough decisions. Anybody here want my job? Really? Want the job? I had a guy ask me, he says, I think I like your job, tell me what it's like. And I told him about the 14-hour days and never being home and all that. He says, never mind, I think I'll go do something easier. Okay? But I'll stand by anything I do. I don't run from that, because I'm not a career politician. I didn't come here to build another career. I came here to work.
This is going to be the last question.
First of all, if the GOP loses the House and the Senate, or one of each, I feel the full responsibility falls on the GOP members in Washington. Second, you got like Senator Burr, who's in charge with a Democrat on the Russian collusion against the other day on TV. He said they found no collusion, but they really keep on looking. That's the kind of stuff that turns us off. And the other thing, where's the money for the wall in the budget? Where's that? Not the $5 billion. They need 10 times that. Where is it at? And the Republicans just don't have the balls to do that.
It didn't sound like a question, just sounded like a statement.
He was looking for the money for the wall, if you know where it's hiding.
I don't know where it's hiding. But you can interpret this any way you want. But I understand national security. I'll put my experience against anybody in most rooms when it comes to securing whatever you want to talk about. Securing a perimeter, securing a country, securing anything. And let me tell you that there will be some type of wall. And when I say some type of wall, if people just look at a literal wall as the answer, the people who want to get around that wall are already around it. If you want to build a wall, you already build a wall. You build it on the southern border of Mexico, in Central America, with Honduras, Guatemala, and those areas, because that's where the problem is starting. I spent 4.5 years representing the Marine Corps' interests, all the Marine Corps, not just the Marine Corps Reserve, but the Marine Corps' interest in Northern Command, which is basically responsibility for protecting the borders, both on the south and north. And there's a lot of information that is, I'll just say, you don't know how ugly it could be, and you don't know how many good things are being done on a daily basis to ensure that our citizens remain safe. And we will get the wall, whatever it might look like, in its various forms, built. Okay?
I think people get frustrated, Jack, with the Republican Party because they seem to be so fragmented. I mean, if people can follow Nancy Pelosi around like sheep, the Republicans got a long way to go to follow anybody around.
But I'll tell you what, I don't understand how Nancy Pelosi does it. She gets everyone to follow her like sheep in her party. Nobody will, pardon me? Okay, the point is, if someone told me this is exactly the way it has to be, and if you're in this party, you have to do it, I'm probably going to give them a one-finger salute very quickly and walk out, because not one individual, except she does it, and she does it through one thing: money and influence. If you think it's any way, I think that's just the way it is, and that's my perception after being there 20 months. So if you want a bunch of sheep, vote for my opponent. Because he will vote the party line as whatever he is told. If you want sheep, don't vote for me.
Thank you, Jack.
By the way, let me just make one closing comment. We live in the greatest country in the world. All you have to do is go outside our borders to see how lucky we are. And I used to say until about a year ago, never say never, never say always, because someone could always make that exception. But I was down in the lower levels of the Capitol reading some documents, and I walked out down this hallway, and there was this big quilt that had some wonderful patriotic sayings. And it said, "Freedom is always worth fighting for." When I saw that, I said, okay, I now have an always. So, in my family, if you had an always, and they had to balance the equation with a never. So my never is never quit. So, don't quit. I'm not going to quit on you. Don't let like-minded friends stay home on the 6th of November, because if you wake up on the 7th of November and say, I should have voted, and it didn't turn out the way we wanted, you didn't honor the service of the men and women who fought for that right to vote by not voting. That's honoring the service of the men and women who in some cases gave their lives for our country for that right to vote. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on, the congressman set a pretty high standard for me, saying the best introduction, the great introduction is a very short introduction. Our next speaker is John Ellsworth. He's a new speaker, so I'm going to give him somewhat less than a great introduction. A little bit of background since he has not been here before. Okay, John was raised in the Upper Peninsula. He and his wife, Corinne, have 2 school-age sons. John went to 2 years of community college at North Central Michigan College in Petoskey, and he enlisted in the Army in August of 2001, happened to pick 1 month before 9/11, becoming the 3rd generation of the Ellsworths to serve in that branch. John did 3 tours of overseas duty, found him in Iraq for 2 of those deployments and 1 Kuwait. He served as a machine gun and Bradley fighting vehicle gunner in the infantry unit, and also spent time on a temporary duty as a criminal investigation investigator. While serving in Iraq, John received the Combat Infantry Badge, the Army Commendation Medal twice, and the Army Good Conduct Medal. Following his honorable discharge in 2005, he earned his undergraduate degree at Northern Michigan in 2008, and a law degree from Cooley High School in Lansing in 2011. Law school. Cooley Law School in Lansing. John passed the Michigan bar exam in his first attempt, and soon began practice in a private firm. He has now been, and he's come to Manistee 5 years ago, and is an assistant county prosecutor. So with that, welcome, John.
Thank you, Mr. Zylish. It looks like a pretty impressive resume when he says that, infantry school, undergraduate training, Juris Doctorate from law school, and none of that has given me the slightest inkling on how to follow Congressman Bergman up here. So I beg of you for your patience. I know everybody's a little bit tired. You've got some full bellies now, so I won't take up much of your time. I'm a big fan of Bob Hope. He's one of my heroes, and he once said that if you can't be funny, for the love of God, be brief. So I'll be trying to do that tonight. A little bit about me, other than just my resume that you may not know. It's closer to 6 years now since that information came out. It'll be 6 years in December that I've been working in the prosecutor's office. Started out as the assistant prosecutor, now the chief assistant prosecutor. In that time, I've had 30 jury trials. I've won 28 of them. My most recent one you may have read about in the paper was a crack dealer by the name of Eddie Scott, who was awaiting sentencing. Drugs, domestic violence, sexual assault, those have been my forte, my focus since becoming a prosecutor. It's something I believe in that has to be addressed. A couple of years back, in late 2015, I helped co-found what's called the Manistee Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault Response Team. That's been with the Tribal Victim Coordinator through United Way, 211, the Sheriff's Office, the City PD, and a couple of other organizations, including Community Mental Health or Central Wellness. And that organization is really taking off. We're bringing in a nationally recognized speaker by the name of Melissa Dome Hill on October 17th. She's a survivor of teen dating violence, and all the local schools are going to be coming to the Youth Armory to watch her, to see her, to learn from her, and to tell these kids what to do when they're in these situations, how to help someone who's in these situations, because a lot of these folks, as teenagers, are going out on their own, I guess you could say, intimate relationships for the first time, and they don't know what they should do and what to expect. So a lot of the education is what that's trying to do. Also, that organization is looking at writing grants to bring in new sexual assault nurse examiners to the county. We have one right now that is trained, and we're trying to get 2 more so we don't have a backlog of kits that need to be done and folks waiting for it. It's a very traumatic time for a lot of these survivors, and so having those services available are paramount to a successful prosecution. And as Sheriff O'Hagan, who's sitting back there, can tell you, I very much enjoy successful prosecutions for these types of folks. It is pretty much my life. Now, I've taken that, and I wanted to give you a background on my prosecution history, because I want you to know that I do these types of things to make the community better. I try every day and I think about, how can I make things better? How can I reduce crime? How can I serve the victims that I've sworn to protect? Incidentally, I've sworn to defend the Constitution 3 times in my life, and I'm still doing that. I'm a big believer in the Constitution. I don't think that a judge should be legislating from the bench. So the only thing that I'm ethically able to promise you, as far as what I would do as a judge, a probate judge and district judge in Manistee County, for those of you who don't know, our population is small enough that the probate judge does both courts. But the only thing I can promise you is that I will look at all the information and apply the law as written in accordance with the Constitution. Okay? I can't tell you whether or not I'm a Republican or a Democrat. That's against the law. And you certainly wouldn't want to have a judge that goes against the law, so don't ask. But I can tell you some of the other things that I've done. I met Mr. Blank over here when I was teaching the legal portion of the concealed pistol license class for the Muzzleloaders Club just outside of town. It's something I do free of charge because I believe that people need to have that type of information, and I believe in the Second Amendment. My opponent, some of you may know, Judge Tom Brunner, I haven't seen him do that type of thing. He seems to be more interested in running his docket, sitting out his term, and collecting his paycheck. That's not what I'm about. I'm all about collaborating with other agencies, improving things for victims, especially as a prosecutor, and applying things fairly. If you do the crime, you do the time. I intend to take that type of attitude to the bench if elected, and I appreciate any support and consideration you can give me. That's it in a nutshell. I'm not going to, like I said, take a lot of your time, but I'd be happy to answer any questions anyone has that I can't answer. Got one back there.
I have a real quick question. If you lose your race against Judge Brenner, how will that affect your survival here in Manistee?
Great question, Mr. Blake. It won't, and I can tell you that for a fact. I survived a couple of tours in Iraq, and one great thing about my campaign now is the prosecuting attorney's office does not work for the judge. And so no matter how much Judge Brunner, if he wins, and I hope he does not, but if he does, and he's a nice man, I'm not going to badmouth Judge Brunner, I just don't think he's a very effective judge. But he's a very nice man. As much as he may want to fire me, he doesn't have the authority to. So that's not going to be an issue for me. It may make things a little awkward when I'm in his courtroom and I have to say, "Hi, Your Honor, I'm here to try a case in front of you," but I don't expect anything other than professionalism from either of us.
Okay, here's one question.
In this era of Me Too and what's going on with Judge Kavanaugh and Christine Ford, and you express that you deal with a lot of sexual assault, how are you going to make sure that the Me Too movement is not successful in its implementation of guilty until proven innocent, which seems to be taking over the court system and the media now?
Well, I'll take a good question. I'll take that in 2 parts. As I said before, I've had 30 trials in front of a jury, which, by the way, is more than the next 4 attorneys in Manistee County combined at the same time frame. And I really sometimes wish it could be guilty instead of innocent being presumed before trial. It would make my job a lot easier. I can tell you that from a prosecutor's standpoint, in Manistee County, I can't speak nationally, but in Manistee County, I haven't seen that. I've had to work very hard for every conviction that I've ever received from a jury, particularly on criminal sexual conduct cases, which are always very hard to prove from a prosecution standpoint. As a judge, you're very much limited by the rules of evidence. Your job is to make certain that whatever the prosecutor is presenting and whatever the defense is presenting is lawful to present, okay? In a nutshell, that's basically what the rules of evidence say. And so again, I can promise you that I will follow those rules to the letter and make certain that everyone's rights are defended. The victim's rights, the defendant's rights, everyone in that courtroom has the respect of the law. And that's exactly what I intend to do. I don't know if that directly answers your question, but I don't think that the Me Too movement in particular is alive and well in Manistee County to the point where it has to be addressed. I do know that our jury selection process is very comprehensive, and we do a pretty good job of weeding out any jurors that have that type of predisposition on the jury.
We have one question over here.
It seems like in many of the news articles, court cases and so on, that the defendants or the perpetrators have more rights than their victims. You know, and that sure don't sit well with me and many other people. And I don't know how that can fall, but that's wrong.
All right, so if I heard the question correctly, you were worried about perpetrators, defendants, and whatnot seeming to have more rights than victims of especially sexual assault crimes and things of that nature. I share your concern on that. It's one of the reasons that I co-founded. Can I just turn this off and yell? Can everybody hear me? Yeah. All right. I'm not used to working with the microphone anyway. Well, there's a little bit more than 12 of you, so, sorry, I won't let it drop. A little bit more than 12 of you, so I'm only used to usually speaking to 12 people at a time, but I'll do the best I can. All right, it's a great question as far as victims' rights are concerned. That's one of the reasons why I co-founded the Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault Response Team. Education for law enforcement, education for medical personnel, victim advocates, teaching professionals, that type of thing, to make certain that a victim who does come forward, and I can tell you that despite the Me Too movement, there's been a very small bump in the number of victims, the percentage of victims who experience these types of crimes that actually come forward. It's a very small number. When you're talking about teens who, and I only know this one off the top of my head because we just did this presentation, in the number of teens who experience domestic violence, for instance, in a dating relationship, it's only about 9% that ever tell somebody in authority about that incident. That's a really low number. Okay? And
people that John here and other law enforcement, you look at last line, only to see these perpetrators and these gang members let go free.
And some of that, I'm going to tell you right now, one thing I can promise you other than that I'll always apply the law fairly, is I will never lie to you. Some of that has been my fault. On occasion, I have dropped the ball. Remember I said I had 30 trials and I won 28? That means I lost 2. Okay? So I didn't get the job done twice. Still got a 95% conviction rate, and if Congressman Bergman's percentage is right, I think I'm above the bell curve. But still, so sometimes prosecutors make mistakes in those cases. And I believe me, I've heard the frustration from police officers who had a solid case that somebody like myself dropped the ball on.
I was talking nationwide.
Oh, nationwide.
Nationwide. These people, we need to see these people.
And a lot of that depends on local jurisdiction things. Texas law is going to be a little bit different than Michigan law, which is going to be different than Florida law, which is going to be different, especially different from California law. So, you know, a lot of it has local connotations to it. All I can tell you is that I know that our local officers in every agency that we deal with, the sheriff's office, the tribe, the state police, the city police, they're all very dedicated officers who are doing an incredibly good job on a very limited budget. And so we in the prosecutor's office try to do the best we can to follow up on their good investigations for a good result. Most of the time it works out, and occasionally it doesn't. And then there's some times where, you know, it's nobody's fault, so to speak. A witness disappears or evidence goes missing, something along those lines. So But we do the best we can, and I think we do a pretty good job of it here in Manistee County.
Are there any more questions? One more question.
How does evidence go missing?
I'll tell you exactly how evidence goes missing. What did you have for breakfast this morning?
Bison steak and french fries.
Okay, who was your high school boyfriend?
I didn't have one.
Okay, who was your college boyfriend?
My ex.
Your ex, okay. What was he wearing the first time you saw him?
And a t-shirt and a rifle.
What song was playing? What song was playing?
I don't listen to it.
What kind of car did he drive?
It was a little yellow van.
Okay, you got too good of a memory for this demonstration. My point is that memories fade. And unfortunately, especially like with sexual assault cases are concerned, most of the cases that I have currently right now, the victims of these sexual assaults, these survivors, are under the age of 15. Okay? Now, I remember some of the stuff that was going on in my life when I was 15. All right? I don't remember nearly all of it. And when you're a 12 or a 10 or a 9 years old, or sometimes even a 5-year-old survivor of this type of sexual assault, that's an even greater percentage of your life. Because when you're 5 and then you're 10, that was half a lifetime ago. It's that same type of memory degradation. And a lot of these perpetrators, they target victims who are going to be hard to get a memory out of.
Okay, so the only evidence you're saying is memory?
I'm saying memory is the best evidence that I've ever presented in court. Witness testimony, their memories of the events. In any case, I'm not talking about sexual assault. A police officer testifies about what happened on a traffic stop for a speeding ticket. It's that police officer's memory that wins me the case. If somebody says they got into a fight, this person punched them for no reason, it's that person's memory about what happened that is the cornerstone of that case. That's all evidence. When I say evidence goes missing, that's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about physical evidence. They do a great job of keeping that around.
Are there any more questions? I'd like to make a couple announcements real quick. There's going to be a Jack Bergman debate tomorrow in Traverse City.
Saturday.
Oh, Saturday in Traverse City. And where is that?
That is, I'm going to...
Oh, I know. It's in
Dennis Center, yes.
Okay. And also...
Doors open at 1:30.
And doors open at 1:30.
And... Okay, thank you. And if anybody would like to attend, there are no tickets. We are going just by check-in on name. So if you want to give me your name, I'm happy to add you to that list. And if you change your mind in the next couple of days, you can always look up bergmanforcongress.com and either email or give us a phone call there. Thanks.
And I think there's also a Constitution celebration at Streeters after that at 4 until 7:30 maybe, in that vicinity, or 8, 4 till 8. There's a Constitution celebration at Streeters after that, and it's $45 per person. And you have to get tickets in advance. I'm doing all this by memory because I wasn't planning on doing any of this tonight, so. Pardon?
You can get tickets at Eventbrite.
Oh, you can get tickets online at Eventbrite.
We also have t-shirts and stuff.
Okay, well, if you need tickets, come see Sally, right? We'll set you up for that. Is there any more, Bob? Thank you very much, Mr. Halsworth.
Thank you for your time, everyone.
Okay, does anybody have anything they want to add to the group? Any announcements to make?
Can I do one?
Sure.
League of Women Voters, we know how they're nonpartisan. But anyway, they're having on September 27th, so I think that's next Thursday, they're doing at the ISD building at 7 o'clock. They're going to have a forum on the ballot issues. Here's flags over here.
Okay.
Let me exactly my voices. Okay. You know, unfortunately, I don't think Jack Bergman or many of the politicians hear the frustrations of the people out here. They just don't. And if they do, they just don't care. And I really believe the GOP stands a good chance of losing because of that. And I hope not, because to get the other ones, and Nancy Pelosi and them, would be a disaster. But Nancy Pelosi's got big, giant cojones. And our GOP, unfortunately, have yellow streaks down their back too many. And that is the perception out here among the people. Maybe not here, but if you go to many of the other meetings, that is their perception, that these guys don't hear us, don't care, and are going to do what they want. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed.
Ed, in many ways, I feel the same way you do, but it's a choice of the best of two bad choices. And all my life, I've had to choose the best of a bad lot when I vote. And don't stay home. You know, make sure you vote for. You don't want those Democrats in office. So please.
But the Republicans are going to put them in the office.
No, we're going to.
Okay. Couple more things again on Thursday, October 18th. Jack O'Malley will be the speaker. We do have our lending library with a lot of books available. We have lists here tonight. If you want to take a look at what we have, and we'll figure out a way to get them to you. It's quite a few books that we do have. Remember that our Facebook page.
Brethren Days, and it looks like Sheriff John O'Hagan is leading the parade. Hey, John.
Why are you out pushing a stroller?
I didn't get her today. Come on, Grandpa. This is a cage like John McCain lived in for years. Thank you.
I forget no one. Let's go. How you doing?
Hey.
How you doing? Hey,
how you doing?
Thanks for coming out and supporting the parade. Good to see you.
Thank you.
How you doing?
Pump it up, varsity, PUMP, ITUP, pump it up, varsity, PUMP, ITUP, pump it up, varsity, PUMP, ITUP, pump it up,
Go for Papa. That's cute. Hi. I don't see him.
They mean Dad?
No, Grandpa. He's the judge. But I don't see him. Yeah. Here it comes. White shirt.
wow, that was a perfect arm grab.
Hey, right here.
How do you do, sir?
Very good, sir.
Nice to meet you. Kathy White Jessica. Kathy White Jessica, running for state rep. Thank you for your service, sir.
Thank you.
Talk to you later.
Take a photo and have my candy with.
Hi.
Might be a little shaky.
Yeah, maybe stick like this with a thread on it to make it look easier. So you don't have to buy one, you can just get a stick.
Yeah, I can duct
Put a
tape my
screw in.
tripod. It's got a thing for a tripod.
I have a tripod in my car.
How's everybody doing?
Hey, Kurt. Hey, come here. I want to shake my hand. Congratulations on winning the primary.
Thank you. I appreciate it. How are we doing?
Hey, give me a sucker. Oh. Hey, thank you. Hey. Thank you. So we dropped 2-3 right here. He's gonna get him.
Yeah, we do.
Give him the hip. Thank you. Oh, another more. Thanks a lot. What are they promoting? Epworth United Methodist Church. Youth. More candy. Thank you. Do this to Kai. Give some to him. Thank you. What are you giving out? Tootsie Rolls! Oh my God, thank you. 40. Thank you.